that will hurt you, you'll have double that will help you.
Amen.
And I've experienced that. I've experienced where I've had, my entire platform is women and helping women and developing women. I have had some women really, truly hurt me. But for that, I have had women help me. I just could not have, I can't see myself here in this place without some of the amazing women in my life. And so I can see the flip side of the negative. And I would hope that someone listening to your show, to this, can know that on the other side of pain there is healing, and on the other side of pain there is someone who's willing to show you different.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that point up as well. What do you think is the largest distinction between someone who's able to do as you've done, climb past the pain, and others who end up stuck in the pain? Because you can have two people in the exact same circumstances, but very different reactions. What is your coping mechanism? How do you look past the hurt, the wrong, whenever it does encounter you?
I refuse to allow fear to take over. I just will not succumb to that.
Excellent.
And whenever there is a breakdown or a putting up of a guard, it's fear. It always goes back to fear. And fear is easy. Mm-hmm. Fear is an easy emotion. And I get it. I understand it, because no one likes to be hurt. We're just not made to feel that kind of pain. But fear, that's something that before we know it, we can be smothered in it. Absolutely. And I just refuse to succumb to that. And that, I believe, is the difference between someone who gets stuck in that space of becoming stationary versus those who fly, who are able to just surpass that level and just move forward and accomplish more. Is that they just refuse to succumb to fear.
Wonderful. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And what you're describing is that difference between living a dynamic life and going after what you think is impossible versus being passive and seeing yourself as a victim and thinking that any circumstance that comes along, you can't control it. Because again, it always blows my mind that you can have two people in the exact same circumstances today that are in very different places tomorrow. And the element that distinguished them was perspective. How did you look at it? As you mentioned, were you afraid? Did you shrink in fear? Or did you stand up tall and know that you could overcome no matter what it is in front of you? And it's not to say that we don't have big challenges, big problems, but there's not anything that we can't overcome if we don't put our minds to it. And, I always like to imagine, what if we were flipped inside out? Because I think that's another thing. As modern women, there's a lot of pressure on us to look a certain way, to carry ourselves a certain way, to have a certain facade. But really, as they say, beauty is skin deep. If everyone was flipped inside out, what do you bring to the table? So do you have heart? Do you have courage? Are you brave? And can you help someone else become that too? So I love that you point out that fear, which is so sneaky, because you're right, it can totally consume you without you even being aware of it. And it's the ones that do the work that end up rising. So very, very nice. Yeah. Now, I'm curious too, just given that the pandemic has really forced so many people to face unprecedented levels of anxiety. So the sneaky thing about that emotion is you'll think you're happy, and then the next moment you're just overwhelmed with worry. If you've ever encountered this, how do you cope? I know you mentioned prayer, but do you have certain routines, certain methods that you do to lift yourself out of the rut?
Yeah, actually I do. I have become a 21-day challenge affirmation, you know, like I have to do them. Like that's every day for me.
Nice.
So once that 21 day is over, I'm on to the next, 21-day challenge affirmation.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you that I've heard that before where, folks are saying, make sure you do some affirmations. And I do morning affirmations, by the way. I am affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you that when I started to do the I am affirmations, I started to do them when I was at a very, I was at a God's road. I don't say a crossroads. I was at a God's road because I wasn't really sure of the direction that I wanted to go in. I was very uncertain about whether I should just really look at whether my life was where it needed to be or should I be going in a different direction.
Got it.
And I started to do these, affirmations. And it gave me such clarity. It really started to change my energy, right? Because remember I said, fear takes over you and then it manifests itself in different ways.
True.
And it manifests itself in negative energy. It manifests itself in doubt. It manifests itself in a number of ways. Mm-hmm. And so when I started to do these affirmations, it reminded me of just how much of a bad mama jamma I am, right?
Right.
And it also reminded me of this life force, this energy force that whatever I put out there is going to come back to me.
Excellent.
Whatever we put out there, it's going to come back to us. So if I'm pouring out positivity has to come back to me. That's the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just reminds me of that. And as I was doing that, I was able to solidify a project that I was trying to get off the ground. I was able to solidify that project. I was able to complete a project and just really start to get some clarity that I didn't have before. So that's one of my routines. It's my morning affirmation.
Very nice.
Certainly prayer. And another one of my routines is I have learned to turn off my phone.
There you go. The disconnect.
I have learned to turn it off, to disconnect.
And it doesn't matter if it's a few minutes, an hour, a day. You're right. You have to unplug so you can recharge. I agree. And if you're still there, you might have gone through a zone. Did you say something?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, there we go.
Okay,
I think it was,
yeah,
I hear you fine. Yeah, okay. You're so right though. The major importance behind making sure that we take that time to reset is amazing. Yeah, you couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
And I love too that you point out the affirmations. One thing that I've embraced lately is setting little goals. And the reason why it goes back to that element you mentioned, being a bad mama jamma. When you do something, there is almost an amazing element that comes from accomplishment. And even when it's something tiny, but you take that feeling and you roll it into the next, it's like an avalanche. Before you know it, you are doing and accomplishing things that you never would have dreamed of last year or 10 years ago. And my most recent experience was physical. So when I was in my teens, I loved working out, super active. Don't know what happens, but eventually when you cross a certain age, that dwindles sometimes. But, I joined a challenge for physicality, and the goal was just to make sure you walk or run at least 50 miles in the month of May. Well,
Mhm.
this beautiful thing transpired. I set my husband and the maintenance team up through the torture of getting a treadmill in the house. And, I felt so obligated after seeing what they went through to get it in here that I've committed you're going to be on that thing every day. And, at first,
Mhm.
putting that bar in front of you, okay, 50 miles for someone who hadn't done a mile in months, I was like,
Right.
I can do this. I'm okay. I got it. But something beautiful happens when you see the numbers going up. And I was like, wait a
Mhm.
minute, I think maybe I can do better than that. And so I moved the
Mhm.
needle. And before I knew it, we're maybe less than halfway through the month, and I got the 50. And
Yeah.
it just gives you this feeling, that it's the fuel, it's that shot in the arm where you start thinking, what else can I do? And when you take
Yes.
that and you make sure you put that in front of the people that you surround yourself with, then everyone gets inspired. So I love
Yes.
how you point that out. Don't stop pushing and, amaze yourself. It's a beautiful thing when you do something that you
Mhm.
thought, I'm not sure, when you stand on top of that mountain and you know that you can tackle the next. So very, very
Absolutely.
nice. So
That's
when it
great.
comes
That's great.
to thank you. And when it comes to inspiration, who or what would you say are your top sources? What really keeps you going?
You know, maybe a couple years ago, I would have answered this question differently.
Mm-hmm.
But, I lost my dad in 2019.
Condolences.
And thank you. And today, my inspiration, and while she always has been an inspiration, I would have probably named her amongst two others. But my very top inspiration, with unequivocally, without anyone as a close second or third, is my mother.
That's
Because
great.
what I've seen her do, since, because my mom and my father, my mother has known my dad since she was 14.
Oh,
They've been married 53 years. And he is the only man she's ever known. And for her to exemplify the kind of strength and and grace that she has,
right.
in such a beautiful way, for someone who, where my father really took care of my family and my mother since she was a teenager,
Right.
since they were married. And for my mother to be out here, doing it now, it's just, I'm so incredibly proud of her. And it's an amazing thing to witness. It's an amazing thing to witness as a woman. I'm almost 50 years old. To see this, it's like I can only imagine what, little girls who are looking up to, the women that they consider role models. Like, I'm looking at my mother like this giant right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
I see her like I haven't seen her before. And it's just an amazing, breathtaking experience for me right now. As a woman of almost 50 years, she is truly my greatest inspiration right now.
That is beautiful. And,
Hmm.
it's been 8 years now since I lost my father. And sometimes it still feels like yesterday. It's a pain that
Hmm.
knows no limit. Um,
Yeah.
but, I love how you touch on that point that when you look at the voids that are left and the people that stand up to fill that, it is nothing
Hmm.
but, um, it's breathtaking. It's just, it's
Hmm.
almost stupefying when you realize the older we get, the more we understand how amazing our
Hmm.
parents are. Um, It's just a natural process that when we're little, like you said, that little girl looking up at the giant, but we
Mm-hmm.
outgrow our skin, so to speak, but we never lose sight of the sacrifices, the wisdom, the patience,
Mm-hmm.
teachings, all the love that they infuse into us, and the fact that, we are them. It really does
Yes.
become a humbling thought that we get to carry on that amazing legacy. And, I have to put a plug in there for your mother. She is such an inspiration to me as well. The
Mm-hmm.
irony here is I've just met her over the course of the past year and a half. So I have a very different
Mm-hmm.
comprehension of who she is and what makes her tick. You have the inner workings, but to be able to
Mm-hmm.
see and comprehend the different levels of how we grow, that must be such a
Yeah,
treasure for you. So wonderful.
it is.
You
It really,
know,
really is.
and just a
It
couple
is.
more questions.
Sure.
Inevitably, there are moments, there are days when life as we know it hands us lemons. When you're having a day like that, what is your motivation to keep going?
I know that everything, I often am reminded that this walk,
Mhm.
that my life is really not my own, that this walk is not my own. My children I have children that depend on me.
Mhm.
I have family that depend on me. And when I say depend, I don't mean that in a superficial way or financial way, but there are people that really depend on me.
Mhm.
And I also recognize how important it is to be able to continue to spread um, how glorifying God's grace is.
Mhm.
And so when I'm feeling like I just can't, I remember that this walk is not my own.
Nice.
It's really, and it's not. And that's really what keeps me going is I know that this walk is not my own. And I want to remain selfless in that walk. It's fine to be selfish sometimes, to self care, to
Mhm.
take care of yourself.
Mhm.
But I really walk my walk recognizing that this walk is not my own, and that we are all here for a purpose. I want to be that vessel. I know that we're all here by design. You and I talking right now is not coincidental.
Absolutely.
It's design. It's
Absolutely.
design. And so had I said, oh well, I'm just gonna not do it, or I'm going out, or I'm just gonna, it's that I just believe that it's the design, and that there is someone that we're supposed to touch.
There you
And
go.
for what, and I don't know that reason why. I don't know, but I don't know if what you're doing is saving a life or what I'm doing is saving a life. I just know that you and I talking right now is not coincidental. And so I know that my walk is not my own, and that is what keeps me going.
Fabulous. Fabulous. When you reference how things do happen, there's always intent, there's always reason. And the fact that we don't know it or we don't know the full picture, it doesn't change the fact. So it
Mm-hmm.
makes me think of these integral forces that God has put into play, like the pulling of the tides in the ocean. Or if we were to
Mm-hmm.
wake up one morning and the earth just stood still, and it would
Mm-hmm.
completely throw us. We'd be like, well, what's going on? We know every morning the sun is going to rise in the east and set in the west. There's just certain rules that are there. We
Mm-hmm.
accept them because
Mm-hmm.
we see them, but there's these other elements, these other beautiful connective dots that we only see them after the fact. So again, it wasn't just words. So humbly, humbly grateful that you were able to take the time and put it in your schedule to be here. And, we're just going to send that message out to anyone who's listening. Dwell on it, think about it, whatever you're hearing that's lifting you, share it. Make sure someone else gets an opportunity, because that connective element of coming together, and then the collective energy of being something bigger than you by yourself, you can't even put a name on it, but it's nothing short of a miracle. So,
Absolutely.
Last question, and it's more of a hypothetical one, but it always reveals some very interesting insights. If we did have a time machine and you jumped in and you went back 20 years, Natasha, what are you saying to yourself?
Saying, girl, take it easy. It is not. It is just not that deep. Gosh, there were so many. Wow, it was like, if I that's a very, very, very good question. Because I can just remember thinking that I wasn't enough, or feeling like I wasn't enough. And if I can go back in 20 years, I'm telling myself, girl, you are enough. You are more than enough. You are everything that you desire, you can accomplish. Everything that you wish for, you can have. You are enough. I recently came into an understanding of Proverbs 18:16, where the word says a man's gifts will make room for him, and bringeth him before great men. And up until that point of where I got this understanding, I had been giving my gifts away. And I was giving my gifts away because I didn't have that wherewithal to know that I was enough all by myself. So I was giving my gifts away, not really knowing, or not really consciously aware that in that doing, and by doing so, I was seeking validation. But when that word says the gifts will make room for him, that my gifts make room for me. So my gifts are meant for me to share with boundaries. Nice. Because I'm enough. I'm enough. I don't have to give it away. I don't have to give it away. I don't need your validation. The only validation we ever need is from the Most High. We don't need anybody else's validation, because the gifts that we have is from Him and only Him. And so that's what I would go back and tell myself, girl, you're enough. You are enough. Your gifts are for you, and you've got all of the gifts you need to accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish.
Very nice. And, the superb wisdom in those few words. Every time that question's asked, it's one of those things where people do get pause. And I think you're doing a quick calculation of where you are versus where you were. But when you bring it back to now and understand the same process repeats. So 20 years from now, you want to make sure you've lived it. And, I encourage everyone to take a few minutes every day and introspect, look yourself in the mirror and say those words. You are more than enough. Because when you know the power that's within you, and you unleash that, and you reach for those things that many others might think impossible, well, there's just no end to your story. Like, you control where the pen goes. And, I was thinking it's kind of like a house, a magnificent mansion. It started with one brick. And it goes over time, it builds until you step back and you see what you've come up with, and you're blown away. Yeah. But, it's unfortunate that some people in their minds limit themselves to just a shack. You have the potential to be anything you want, and it starts with laying the first brick. So, Natasha, it has been such a wonderful crossing of the paths, meeting of the minds. Can't thank you enough for sharing your experiences. If there's anyone out there who wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way? Do you have any social media handles, email?
I do. You can always reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at High Heel Leadership. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at High Heel Leadership.
Nice.
You can also reach out to me on my website at natashahampton.com.
Excellent. I'll make sure that's included in the description so everyone can go and get in touch for more inspiration. And of course, we do invite you to visit newuwow.com. That way you can join the tribe. Make sure that you're leading with inspiration and never, ever limiting yourself. And remember, amazing things await you. Just step up, be ready, and don't let an opportunity pass you by. Thank you all for joining us here on New You Wow, wishing you safety and blessings, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to share this video and like, comment, and subscribe. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at New You Wow. Until next time, stand tall in your power, and remember, your belief in yourself is your superpower.